So welcome, everybody. If you haven't noticed, we have a special guest today. Samantha is in town visiting us, so we thought, what a better time than to take this opportunity to actually record some sessions, some episodes, some podcasts here in person with all three of us. It solves a lot of problems, actually, because we've been having a little bit of difficulty getting the volume of the mics synced with Zoom. Zoom can kind of be crazy. So this is nice. We all have our mics on the same frequency, the same wavelength, and so it should come across a little better without a lot of tweaking.
Yep.
Well, we're also light workers. We're not technicians.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
We're a lot of other things. We're a lot of other things.
Although I play one on TV, I don't.
You slept in a Holiday Inn Express.
Exactly. I slept in a Holiday Express last night.
Yeah. So we're coming to you from the Charleston area this time, all at once, and we're going to talk about behind the scenes. You guys are going to get a sneak peek at what it's like to actually have a client session, no matter what it is. And some of you out there already do see your own clients, but there are many others who maybe haven't stepped into their gifts yet fully, and so they're curious about what might take place during a session. We want people to understand that the session isn't just about the 30 minutes or the 60 minutes that we're seeing the client. It's actually a whole lot more in preparation and aftercare and follow-ups and all sorts of stuff. So we're going to give you guys a behind-the-scenes glimpse of what it's really like.
Wonderful. You want to go first, Will?
Sure.
Or?
Absolutely. I mean, where to begin? I mean, how far back do you want to go? I mean, it all starts.
So, for example, you're getting ready to do, for example, a 30-minute pet session or a 60-minute higher self channeling with someone. So tell me
what does that look like?
What does that look like?
I mean, from the first client interaction with the contact form, I mean, for myself, because I'm the one that's going to be doing the channeling, I want to be completely void of any of that information. So if they reach out to me directly, I always forward that on to Allison and allow her to contact the client and allow her to have that interaction and bring in the questions through her, because I want to be clean from that. I don't want to have any interaction from that. The only thing I request now, the difference would be between a pet channeling and a higher self channeling would be, the request that I have is the pet's photograph, the name, the breed, the age, that kind of thing.
Oh.
I use that, and that's kind of the process I go through. Is the day of 30 minutes prior to the session, I'll do a meditation, or I'll come up here and invoke their name and call their energy in, and I'm focusing on the animal, I'm focusing on their name, and I'm getting connected at that point. And I hold that connection here in the space until we do right up to the point at which we do the session. Then I'm connected for the session, and I bring in the animal's higher self for their energy. For a client that wants we'll say a higher self channeling, that is more of a process of just even 15 minutes before the session, I'll sit up here. I have a bit of I'll call it an invocation that I use to call in my team, call in their team for their highest good. And because I'm calling in their energy so that I can become their channel, become their voice. Same thing with the pet. And, that's a process of just focusing on the client's name, envisioning their presence, their energy here, connecting to it, and then starting the process once they get on Zoom or if they come in person,
So there's a little bit of a process that you go through before the session, but because the two of us work together on that, I'm doing a lot of the front end stuff.
Allison's more of the background work leading up to the session. Yep.
Communicating with the client and the emails and the questions, and making sure that I understand the questions okay, so that I'm the one facilitating and I'm the one asking the questions, so I need to make sure I have clarity on what the client actually needs.
Right. And sometimes for you, that's a process of 3 or 4 emails back and forth to really drill down into some of those questions that they're bringing forth. Some clients, say for a higher self-channeling, you'll get 5 questions for an hour-long session, and that's not...
And then I panic.
Right, because that's not enough questions to actually sustain an hour-long conversation. With a higher self, right?
Or then somebody will send me 3 pages of questions, and I'm kind of like, are these in order of preference? Because we're not going to get that.
But it helps to provide that clarity. I mean, to really get them to hone in, because they know there's a reason why they're coming in, why they're asking these questions, that there's something there. But helping them formulate, prepare those questions, that's so important.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is a lot of times the questions relate to each other anyway. And so they've asked them as all of these different questions, but one thing leads to the next and the next, and you can kind of cross off several as you're going through the session anyway.
Which can be good and bad. If all 5 are related to basically the same
Yeah,
thing.
luckily though, I have enough experience that there's a lot of things that I can ask that they might not have thought of. So
Right.
You're good at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we just recently had a client that had a session that all of the questions were, very vague. From what you said, were very vague. Went back to the client to get clarification. Even the clarification was even more
still
vague.
kind of vague.
So, but
What was the purpose?
Right. So, but here's the interesting thing, and I think this is a question for you. When you get into the session and I get connected with their higher self and I'm out, how do you then take those questions and unwind the simplest question into 15 other questions or 5 other questions? Is that something that is intuitive, or is that something that you're, I don't know, I guess just from doing so many questions, or is it just really pure curiosity out of your, or is it a combination, I guess?
I'm sure it's a combination, and I would tend to say that it's based on what I'm hearing in the session. I mean, I tend to downplay the intuitive piece, but I'm sure that a lot of it has to do.
You got it going on.
I'm sure that it does, but what I would be prone to say is, oh yeah, well, I'm listening to what they say, which I do. I listen because the higher self always has an opening statement.
Yeah.
So I listen to that, and then I see if there's a little nugget in there that relates to one of their questions, and then that's where I start to dive in. And so I usually never ask their questions in order anyway. So I'm diving in depending upon how they answer.
You actually have a little bit of a tell because when something makes you curious, there's this gleam you get in your eyes.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Sure.
And you're just kind of like, ooh.
I get to peer behind the curtain a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess that's, another good point is so a client brings you a list of questions. And this is more for my curiosity because I really don't know the behind the scenes.
I know,
right?
I love this
so
stuff.
this is really,
so cool.
so this is a really interesting peek behind the curtain for myself of how this operates. All I have to do is come up here and just put myself into trance. I mean, that's all I do,
part,
right?
yeah.
That's the easy part. But if a client gives you 25 questions and they're very methodical about grouping them for themselves, but yet their higher self comes in somewhere around the middle or somewhere near the end and starts answering those questions just intuitively, how do you then weave that back together? I mean, because to me that would be just, I don't know.
Really,
I guess because I'm kind of OCD when it comes to lists. If I'm going to do a list, it's 1 through 10, and I'm going to do 1 through 10.
Sorry, higher self, you can't answer that yet because it's down here.
Right.
I'm still up here.
Yeah.
No. I mean, it's if it were the case that the higher self started rolling on the questions that are towards the bottom that I'm thinking were extras or something like that, I would go over 60 minutes if it got to that, because I want to make sure I cover the most important things for them.
Okay.
So, I mean, if it kind of went off the rails, which it usually doesn't, but if it goes off the rails that way, or if there's something of curiosity to me, I definitely will go over. I'm not going to use up the client's time.
So take a minute and explain that because that's an interesting sidebar to this, because if the higher self is having a conversation with the client and there's some piece that invokes curiosity in yourself to a point of information that you haven't heard before, how do you address that so that the client is okay with you kind of going off script and maybe thinking they're using some of your time. So,
yeah, because they do get stressed. I mean, you can,
sure.
When you're doing an intuitive reading, you can see the stress if you start kind of going off a little bit, but you think it's important.
Yes.
And they're just kind of
going. Because they don't know you're going to give them the extra time.
Yeah,
Right.
I've learned to start pre-paving that one. Just tell them ahead of time, is this a hard stop at this time? Because if I have a little bit, more information coming through, I'd like to be able to extend this. And then they love it because then they realize, I'm getting a little bit more time.
I do the same thing when I'm a one-on-one client with someone, or clients one-on-one with me. I do the same thing. I set it up front and saying, look, if we start, getting near the end of the session, but yet I am so connected and there's so much information coming through that's so important for you. I'm not going to look at the clock and go, well, we're going to have to schedule another session to,
right.
part two. No, I think most light workers or most practitioners that have sessions, they're going to know that, hey, if we get into the weeds of something and we need to figure this out, we're just going to keep running the clock. I mean, it's just normal.
For the most part, at this point, I don't have topics that I haven't heard before that need that level of investigation. However, sometimes there's a lot to unravel for the client that wasn't evident in their questions. Okay. And I will unravel a lot for the client and go overtime if I have to, because you can't. It's not their fault that if they asked an innocuous question about a past life and it's so much detail and so healing that they need that, but then you can't get to the other. I would not do that.
Right, okay. Makes sense.
But that's that hasn't happened too often where there's an interesting topic. But the most evident one was with our friend Wendy, who was a client at that time, and now she's our friend. But she asked if she was a walk-in. And at that time, I knew that walk-ins were fairly rare. And I kind of had the idea from Dolores Cannon books what it was, but I didn't have all of the juicy details. So
wait, pause. That's a point of a dictionary thing right there. You got to say, what is a walk-in? That's
a good point. Yeah,
so people understand what we're talking
about. Just a sentence or two.
So
because that might be a whole nother podcast.
A walk-in is simply an energetic exchange between two souls. When one soul can't fulfill its mission in the human body, there's kind of an agreement made with another soul that will step in. And it could be any age from late teens on up into adulthood, and they'll step in and fulfill that mission because the physical body's fine and doesn't need a transition.
Okay. See, she's our encyclopedia Britannica.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
So anyway, I did that with Wendy, and she had asked if she was a walk-in, and they said yeah, and I was shocked because I had never met one yet. And so I just started asking questions, and a lot of times I'll look at Zoom and go, are you okay if we explore this? I'll go over if I need to. And they're usually, shaking their head because they're muted on the other end. So all of that's fascinating, but I also wanted to ask you, Samantha, because you mentioned this before, but I don't think maybe the public is aware or they don't think about this, but if you have a session at, 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening, you're not having a beer at lunch.
No.
Or if your session's even at 8 o'clock, you're not having a glass of wine with dinner.
Yeah, you're not going out partying the night before.
Right.
Or even the night before. So tell us about that process in terms of keeping your body clean and all of that.
Well, I will say I did that once. And the next morning getting up and having that session, but I was surprised because all I had to do was meditate and my body, it cleared out real quick.
Yeah.
So I was kind of surprised by that. And I was so set and ready to go. And this was before I started, charging ahead of time, having people deposit or whatever.
Yep.
And this person did not show up. And I was like, I went through all of that. Wait, what? But anyway, when I know I've got sessions coming up, and you might know you have so many in the week coming up or whatever, it's almost like, the skiers that go between the poles and stuff. When you got to lean in, when you got to, when you can do more personal stuff in your life, when you can schedule more personal things, or when you kind of need to just stay more on your own and balance that energy out. It's you might tell your family, I can't go to this family event the night before, if you know that that's something that can get you tied up in knots and you don't want to be in that space the next day.
Right.
I feel kind of, sad for my husband because he has to put up with me going, especially an hour before the session. I'm like, we can't discuss anything. And I'll go in and I'll do
we'll bring that topic up too. We'll bring that. That's a good segue to something. Yes.
Oh, well, it's funny because I'll go in and I'll do my half-hour, meditation, getting myself set and ready. And then I always go out, go to the bathroom beforehand because you never know how long a session's going to last. And it's when I go out to the bathroom, we've got offices at home and his is next to mine. So it's whenever I go out to the bathroom that he'll go, okay, the plumber said, and I'm like, no,
Yes.
and he just tries to get that one little thing in, and he gets this frustrated look on his face because it's like, why can't we answer this?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, not here. It's not me. I'm a ghost, So, I go to the bathroom. I quickly get back in the room, and so I've got a friend of mine made a sign for me to put on my door now that says, come in or do not disturb in session. And but I have found that I actually have to lock the door at times too, because it's like, he he's not sure if I'm done yet or not. And he just wants to check in real quick, and, bless him for it. It's just, but it's so anyway. So it's just, you've got to, we monitor ourselves constantly and making sure that we are coming at it with the best energy that we possibly can. So, what I have said to clients before is when they've asked me about these things is that you're not just paying for that session. That is not the thing. You are paying for, and it's not just the years of expertise, that I've put into this.
Right. Yeah.
There's, yes, just like anything else, there's continuing education. There's managing your energy. There's managing your household, the energy around you and your office space and so forth. And part of the professionalism is showing up in the best form that you possibly can for that session.
Right. Yeah. That's really good. I'm glad that you expounded on that. That's so important. And I don't think people understand that. It's not like you just punch a time clock and go to work and then come home.
Some of them understand it. The ones that may not fully be immersed in the metaphysical or in the spiritual, but for the newcomers,
like how do you go about doing all this?
Right. And I think that's what more this conversation really is geared towards, is the real newcomers that are stepping into their gifts, and they're wanting to they're saying, I want to work in this field. I want to work in this field.
How do I do it?
How do I do it? And you got to kind of have a window behind the scenes. I mean, yes, it's not just the 30 minutes or an hour before the session. It starts way back. I mean, if you're going to do it as an actual business, well, it's establishing a business. That's why I asked early on, how far back do you want to go with this? Because it's really establishing yourself as a business through the state, getting yourself set up as a tax ID. Then it's formulating how you're going to put together a website and manage a website, and who's going to manage it for you, yourself or somebody else? How are you going to handle emails? How are they going to be filtered through, and how are you going to respond to those? It's all of that back end. And so when you say, here's your price for your session, well, that is for your 90-minute session, or that is for your hour-long or 30-minute or whatever time length your session price is. But here's what goes into that 90 minutes, or into that amount for that session. It's to maintain the business up to the point at which you sit in front of me.
And not just sitting in front, but afterwards.
Yes, the aftercare.
Okay,
absolutely.
Because there's the whole aftercare part of it. Because a lot of times, whether it's channeling or intuitive or mediumship, there's a lot of times I keep a notepad near me because I'm writing down, let me suggest Abraham Hicks. Right. Let me suggest this particular book, And, so I know that afterwards I'm going to be, especially if it's Zoom, you've got to download the Zoom video. You've got to set it up for them to be able to get access to it. And then there's whatever books that you've suggested and so forth. And like that right there can easily eat up half an hour of your time.
Right.
So it's just like, it's amazing how this stuff, so it's not just that half hour or that hour.
Well, even scope it a little differently. You're watching us on a podcast. You're watching us sitting here talking about this. Well, this took about an hour and a half to set up all the equipment, test it, get it all right.
It'll be a little bit more it'll
streamlined in time, but right now, because it's very new, and then post-production, going through and editing it and making it, prep it for, so there's that time. So you have to, and that comes down to anything that you do. If you do business long enough, it's not just the end product, it's what leads up to it and what happens afterwards. So, I think that's a good point. But I want to go back to, and I think it's...
I want to go back to that too. However, I just wanted to mention...
Oh, God, something's going on.
Oh, yeah. No, we're both tracking on that one.
That's because we're married.
No, that's right.
But in terms of aftercare, we love to hear from our clients.
Oh my God. I love when they respond, and it's so rare. I don't know how it is for y'all.
It takes spits and spurts.
Fairly rare.
Sometimes we'll get clients like one after another, just responding like a week or two later, and then it just dries up for a little bit. So,
every session, at the end of every session, I'm like, I really want to know. Please let me know how you're doing. If there's something that you may not quite have understood or whatever, please ask me. Yeah. I just let me have the opportunity to offer clarity.
Right.
I'm offering that to them, and yet, I've had one woman who's reached out to me several times now, and it's been so much fun because I told her about her husband didn't want any more dogs. She had all these dogs that all have health issues, and she felt like that was her thing in life, was to take care of all these dogs that had health issues. And next thing you know, it's coming out of my mouth, well, you need another dog. And she's like, I don't think that's going to happen. And I said, no, this is a dog for you and your husband. And I could see it. I'm getting goosebumps. And I could see it because this dog was, it was going to be perfectly healthy. It was going to be a puppy. And it was just going to fit right in their home. Aww. And it was going to be this just kind of a union kind of thing.
Yeah.
And she goes, well, where am I going to find it? And I gave her a basic idea. And I said, that dog's coming to you. Just know that. And again, goosebumps. Well, she has now sent me so many pictures and responded, gives me updates. And I mean, I live for that. I love it. It's just, it's so, and what this dog has done for their family, it's just like so freaking cool.
Yeah. And so every time we tell our clients as well, please reach out to us or ask questions, or if you have any insight, let us know, fill us in.
Yeah, as you're going on this journey, because we're just one step of the journey. And as you're going on this journey, we're a resource for you. I tell them straight up, I don't have all the answers. My wife doesn't have all the answers, but we have a group of people that may have the answer you're looking for. That's the most important thing.
It's amazing how many of our clients have become friends now.
Absolutely.
Honestly, a lot of our friends started out as clients. But the point in that was that you do spend time answering emails. Like I just got one a couple of days ago, and she was concerned about something that had come across. And, I was like, I'm pretty sure you're not interpreting it 100% accurately. Please go back and listen to that. Listen with your heart, not your head. Release any expectations or whatever. And I mean, I took time to write a longish concerned email because I am concerned. And so all of those types of things, that interaction and, that takes time. But it's the part also that we enjoy is
the
relationships. The relationships.
So here I think is the difference, and maybe why people hesitate to reach out to us. Because again, I'm all about the new paradigm, old paradigm kind of thing. Old paradigm is the intuitive psychics, mediums who schedule, like they book out 6 sessions in a day, 6 to 8 sessions. Yep. I was up at, where's that place called?
Lilydale?
Yes, I was up there, and
ESP there.
I was not. Okay, so we don't have that. We're not tracking, but we have ESP going on,
right?
But I just thought, God, you're living in this community where people are going to constantly, and they have these sign up lists, and it's like one after the other, and I'm like, that is a drudge. That is no longer fascinating, fun, or and the thing is, I would rather have the higher price, honestly, and be able to devote that time, because those people don't have the time. They don't have the energy. They're wiped out at the end of the day, and it's like done.
Right.
Whereas we do have that follow-up energy. And so that's why I would rather be where I'm at, with my prices, so that I'm putting all of that into it and can give more of myself. For me, it's like, the max I think I do is 3 sessions in a day of like intuitive work. I can do a couple of more sessions if I'm doing like my spiritual life coaching, which is a different avenue of energy.
Sure.
Yep.
So it just all depends on what we're actually doing.
Sure.
How long can you go?
I typically, my framework is I won't allow myself to do 2 personal channelings, 2 higher self channelings in a day. But if it's a higher self and a pet channeling, or 2 pet channelings in a day, that's not a problem. I could probably pet channelings. I could probably space out 3 of them in a day if I needed to.
But the issue is, since we work together, and I'm still working full time.
That's right.
Then we can only fit in so much. But you probably could do 2.
But like yesterday we did a higher self in the morning and a pet in the evening.
Because we've done personal channelings, which
that's
are
true.
At least an hour.
It depends too. And this is really kind of the caveat in that is it depends on how. And you don't know this until you get into the personal higher self channeling of what needs to be healed or what needs to be worked on.
True.
If
some are more vanilla, for sure.
Some are very you lock into their energy and it's so beautiful. It's just uplifting. You feel energized and complete at the end. Others, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I'm not going to go into what it is.
Not to say that their higher self is not beautiful. It's wonderful, beautiful.
It is, but there's a lot of work.
There might be a lot of...
There's a lot of healing
trauma
that takes...
or healing that needs to take place.
And so that takes a lot from me. And so there's a recovery time I want to allow myself, so I'm 100% for the next client. So that's why if I were to do two personal higher self channelings, one would be definitely in the morning, 9 o'clock time frame, and the next one would be probably the 6 o'clock time frame. I'd allow myself that amount of time to just be the recovery point, because if the 9 o'clock session is a doozy, I don't know how long that's going to take for me to recover.
And again, I think a lot of that is your conscious mind.
Oh, it's my head.
You really don't
Absolutely.
know what happened during the session, and you really aren't drained. I mean, you feel fine.
Yeah, but it's
weird how it can be taxing. But yeah, I think
my mind comes out of it, after the session, and I'm sure a lot of it's going to be a mind game with me. I mean, I think
that's
everybody.
Another behind the scenes thing. It doesn't matter what modality you're doing. You're still a conscious being.
Yeah.
And you still have conscious thought processes running in the background.
For me, I want to dedicate the appropriate amount of time for each individual that I'm going to be working with, whether it's a pet channel or whether it's a higher self channel. And I want to allow enough time in between that I know that I'm coming into it for that person at 100%, not 75, not 85. But I want to make sure I'm at 100%.
Yep.
So I can give my genuine 100% effort.
And that's when the fascinating stuff happens.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's when it's just magic. It's so much fun. So why wouldn't you be there?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I'm curious, because we're talking about intuitive kind of stuff. And BQH is more, is that more energy based?
Beyond quantum healing, spiritual hypnosis. Okay. Some practitioners are more intuitive than others and will see or experience what the client is sharing during the session.
How many of those can you do a day?
Oh, gosh, for sure only one.
Okay, because there's how many hours?
Mine are 3 hours. Okay. And that's about average, low average. I mean, some QHHT, which is very similar, those practitioners are doing upwards of 5 and 6 hours, which is crazy.
For one session.
I think with the evolution of it, and I consider Beyond Quantum Healing to be kind of an evolution to Dolores Cannon's original work. But I think people are understanding that we don't need to go through the machinations of every single past life and all of this sort of stuff. And so you can abbreviate them. And you can even do some really quick hypnotic conscious work. Even in the talking, you can get somebody into a trance state and go through some questions really quickly before they think about, kind of like what Freud would do. What do you see in this picture? Real quick. What do you see? First thing. So you can kind of do that. So the sessions don't need to be as long, but to answer your question, one.
Well, because your mind, I was just thinking about it, your mind is constantly analyzing what's coming through. Like you're hearing it, you are getting downloads, intuitive downloads of what to ask next, but it is alert, staying on it. And I know I have to be that way in spiritual life coaching. Always, but feeling those downloads, nudges of when to ask this or when to ask that. But when you're doing mediumship or channeling, it's lovely because I always feel like I'm cheating now. Because you have to come prepared, but then you get to just sit back and let them, for me, I'm sitting there going, oh my God, are you going to say that? Are you going to say, oh my God, they just said that? But I'm just sitting back the whole time, kind of going,
That's interesting to think that you get to call it taking a back seat, kind of.
It's definitely a back seat.
Interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because as a medium, before I knew a medium, knew anybody in that field, I would have thought it was kind of, maybe not stressful, but you want to be on and you want to make sure you're on your game. And if things don't come through, you're kind of stressing out and whatever. But I hear.
That's the channeling part of it. Now, mediumship, that can be stressful because yes, you want it, this person has come, their heart is literally on your table.
Yep.
And it can go beautifully and it can go 9 different ways. I just had a session where I was, her husband apparently was coming through. We had to kind of pull his energy in.
Yep.
And there was a reason why we kind of had to pull his energy in. And it was, I was like, how long has it been since he's passed? And she said 4 years. And the message he was giving her before I asked that was, you need to just go and do your life, go live your life. Well, I said, his energy is just pulling back, and I don't know why. So when she said the 4 years, I was like, aha, he's telling her it's time to get on with her life.
Yeah.
Now, I can't say that.
Right.
But you're sitting there
You can blame it on the spirit.
You're thinking all of this stuff, and it's like, how do I handle this in the most meaningful way, for this person? And sometimes the information is going to create pain with the person if they're wanting to continue that relationship, or they're not getting the answer that, say, they typically would get from another medium, you know. So those kind of things can be super, super stressful.
Yeah. I agree.
That's another point, is this preparation of being ethical and tactful, learning how to interact, having interpersonal relationship type skills. Because I know, like you said, with the legacy people, we were doing Illuminate Festival. I remember the founder of Illuminate Festival would put out an email to everybody, and she'd say, don't tell people they only have 5 weeks till they're going to die. Don't tell people that blah, blah. I mean,
who even gets that
I remember asking.
Yeah, I'm like,
that's what I'm
I remember asking her, are you kidding me? This is what she goes, I wouldn't put it in writing if it didn't happen. So there are mediums who just
or psychics,
spew everything, or psychics or whatever. They're unethical people, or maybe people that just don't have a clue.
But it's not to say that they're not getting that.
Trained.
Well, it's not that they're not getting that information. It's just there is a bit of decorum and tact that you have to have. I mean, if you're seeing clients at your house and you have an extended period of time with them, you can navigate through that appropriately. But if you're in a 15 or 20 minute reading or 30 minute reading in a fair, my personal opinion, not the appropriate place to handle that.
There's not enough time to establish that rapport.
Yeah.
Well, and I know that if I don't typically get those kinds of messages, but it might just be that I'm getting a blank wall.
Right.
It's kind of like there's no information beyond that, and I'm starting to feel like if they're going, well, should I plan for this or this? And you kind of go, well, you better do this because that's not going to happen.
You're right.
So I get those kind of feelings, but I will push on it like 3 times. And if I get that nudge from spirit that this is the information that needs to be given, then it's like you need to front load, your activities because there's a potential of something coming up, but and they're never going to be that specific because then people interfere with their own life.
Right. I was exaggerating, but I mean, you get the
no, and I agree with that.
No, it's a good point though.
But I agree with you with the 3 test, the 3 test, whatever you want to call it. If I get a piece of information through a psychic reading or even through a mediumship reading that seems to be a bit brash, and it happens, I start a dialogue, a very strong dialogue with who I'm blending with, higher self, or while I'm doing a psychic reading or spirit, and I'll ask it 3 times, but not like immediately in a row.
Yeah, you come back, circle back around.
Circle it around 3 times. And if it comes back to me 3 times, the same thing that was the very first one, this is a piece of information that has to come through. And that's why when I have a client with me here in the treehouse.
Today it's a studio.
Today it's a studio. I will then say, look, because at that point we already know we've already established a connection. I'm saying this is going to come across a bit brash, but I have to say it exactly the way they're telling me to say it. Yeah. And 99% of the time, it's exactly what spirit, when they were here physically, would have told them.
Yeah.
Exactly
their
like
personality.
that. Their personality.
Yeah.
So
it shows their personality.
So it's an appropriate time. Yeah. So I'm not taking anything, away from any other person. I'm just saying there are, in my opinion, there are places to and not to bring in such direct information. Yeah.
Do you know what I find interesting about that? Understand, I've been doing this a long time through, tarot and then the other stuff. And you have not been doing it as long, but just as powerful. And we've not been taught by any of the same people by any, means. And yet we both just...
The similar type of...
I think it's just part of this energy or whatever. Like when you really get into this in the idea of service, that heart space, it becomes this thing where you just... you align ethically with spirit.
Yes.
And you
Absolutely.
just know, like it's just a thing.
It's a divine alignment when you're connected like that, and you know that whatever information is coming through you is appropriate. I mean, it's just, and you're right, the teachings may be different, but the outcome is the same.
Which means it's not just a job. That's the point. That's the bottom line. It's not a job.
Well, you're in your heart space. Think about it, because the people who are answering the brash, questions, like, anyway, the ones that are just diving right into it, I think they're doing more in their head than they are in their heart. They're feeling the need, I've got to answer this. And I don't feel the need to just answer it directly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not where the information's ever coming from. It is really, my thing is all about a shift in their perspective. They're like, I'm in pain about this. And it's like, well, let's look at this differently.
Right.
It's not how do you get out of this pain? Because how you perceive it is how you get out of it.
That's a really good point. And it's subtle, but important.
Yeah.
I know you wanted to get back to behind the scenes of married couples who do this work.
Okay.
So,
I mean, well, and just to let our audience know, I mean, Allison and I, we've been married it'll be 33 years this year.
Better get that one right.
So yeah, I got to get it right. But yeah, 33 years this year. And so when you brought up about, you both have your own offices and,
don't talk about stuff right before a session.
Right. Don't talk about life, right? Leave life out of it for the first.
I feel like I'm about to go into a therapy session.
No, we've worked through that.
Okay.
But what's interesting.
We've worked through that.
Yeah, right. I think we have.
Mostly.
It was early on, and you alluded to it. We haven't been doing this work that long. I mean, 7 years, I guess you were saying the other day. So I'll continue. It's not long, but early on when we would have, and just with Reiki sessions
Or Reiki classes particularly is what I remember. We would need to come upstairs, or even when we were doing it in the house, we would be preparing for a class. And I'm telling you, Will and I come from two totally different perspectives about everything. If you could be on opposite ends of the spectrum on just about every topic.
If she's white, I'm black. That's how. That's to start contrast.
That's the way it is, with the exception of the major life things like having children and values and that sort of thing. But all of the nuances, like how to do this or how to do that, or what food to serve, or how to whatever, it's all different. And so we would find ourselves like arguing right before a Reiki
having
class.
a throwdown. I'll put it. I'll even
As
phrase
we're
it that way.
setting up or whatever.
Yeah.
And so we're exploring, do we have this energy? Is this anger that needs to come out? And the nice thing about doing this work is that you cannot let that continue. You have to reconcile.
Right.
And so, we just get that out, clear that energy, then clear the air, come up here, and it would be a beautiful class or a beautiful session or whatever. So I almost think some of it might have been purposeful.
I think, in terms of clearing energy. Looking back at it, I think we were both intuitively picking up on what was going to be taken care of during the session, or taking, the dynamic in the class or whatever it might be. We were picking up on that beforehand, so it was causing tension between us, and we both had to get that out. We both had to release that, because amazingly enough, those sessions were so profound, or those classes, the dynamic in those classes were so profound. So I think we were alleviating some of that. I mean, yes, there are personal differences between us. And that, you talk about behind the scenes. I mean, I intuitively knew 33 years ago or 35 years ago, we've been together, that, I knew we were going to work together. I knew she was going to write books. I knew all this stuff. And I told her that. And she's like, there's no way in hell I'm going to work with you, because you're too much of a perfectionist. Fast forward to 2015, and it all just started unfolding, and here we are. And it is this, I couldn't ask for a better partner in business than Allison. I mean, it's just, there's just something.
Well, thank you. Well, the bottom line is we know that we came in here together to do this work. And so when that's the case, I mean, there's just a dynamic that when the two of us are together, it's more powerful than single individuals. Yeah. It's just an alchemy and an energy that creates beautiful miracles for the clients and stuff. And
I mean, if I could do my psychic and mediumship work with her tied to my hip, I would love it. But I haven't.
But I mean, there are challenges to that too, like you mentioned, and not just the fact that we might have a spat or something. But the fact that I work full time, and so we can only see clients when we have to do it together on certain times of the day, or
that's it.
And so that can be challenging. So early on, it was kind of like, is there something that do you think you could channel by yourself? Is there something that you could do to expand yourself without me? But we realized it just needs
there's
to be.
that dynamic of when I'm channeling, we've created this, I hate the phrase safe space, but we've created this container to work in. And part of that container is Allison and her strength of questioning. I always joke about, Allison's acute ability to question and unravel questions. If she was a detective, I'd hate to be the criminal in front of her, because I'd go to jail in 20 seconds because the amount of questions she would lay in front of me, I would have no idea.
Coming from different directions,
right?
Too.
Exactly, and just unraveling it, and it's all out of pure curiosity. And I think that goes to your education too, your the psychology background. There's the peering behind the thought process. It's not just the question; it's what the thought process that got to the question. So that's all beforehand. You look at those questions beforehand. You ascertain what avenues you can go down. How can you clump them together? And it's all part of that process. Yeah.
I want to clarify something, because I've said this once or twice where you haven't been doing this as long, but that's not totally accurate. You haven't been doing it as a
profession.
Right. But you've had all these insights and awarenesses and knowing, that's been going on for quite
the
some
intuitive
time.
The intuitive side. I mean, now that I can see how it all played out, yes, the intuitive side of myself has been very strong all my life. By training for the military, I'm a diesel mechanic, a Marine diesel mechanic. Rarely did I ever crack open a manual. I intuitively could tell you, and I was trained by old school mechanics, and that just fostered the strength in my intuitive abilities, because those old school mechanics were intuitive themselves. So I learned how to just hone my intuitive sense of how to fix something, not by opening a book and reading 1 through 3. That's
but even listening. What does it sound like?
Right.
How to diagnose.
What does it sound like? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? All the different. Or use all of your senses. Well, you apply that to life.
Yeah, there you go.
And there it is, right in front of you. So it's kind of just redesigning how you operate. I'm a diagnostician by not by training. It's just my personality. I like to tear stuff down and see what makes it tick. So maybe to my detriment, as far as this channeling thing, I try to deconstruct the channeling thing to figure out how it works. Well, there is no figuring out how it works. It either does or doesn't, and it is who I am, right? Yeah. So, but that's okay.
But you did use a lot of diagnostic technique to figure out how to perfect your channeling.
Absolutely. And
listen to this music.
What were the nuances when you can feel I'm coming in?
That could be another really good, maybe a short, maybe a whatever, because a lot of people want to know, how did you know? That's one of the biggest questions I get. And I find it fascinating, because people will sit in their session and they have questions that they really want to ask about their life.
Yes.
But so, I usually first 10 minutes of a session, I'm just like, okay, this is going to be an hour and 10 minutes. I know it's going to go over, because they sit there, they just wonder, how did you know? How did you, this gift you have? But anyway, that is for another.
I think that'd be a good topic for sure.
Because that's a huge question. I think if they could, I remember when I was going through this, you just wanted to drill down the line, asking everybody so you could figure out where your hook is, where your that pull that you could start getting into it. So that'd be fun to talk about. So anything else about behind the scenes? Oh, wait, I do want to say something about behind the scenes. So it's really funny for me right now. So my son used to live in the bedroom that was not above my office. He now is in the bedroom above my office. And we have always encouraged him. He shreds guitar like nobody's business. He's really good. He loves, the 80s rock, or the 70s, 80s rock, heavy metal, all that. And he's quite good at it. And he'll hit on songs that I just want to dance around in my office. I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome, And so even it's 11 o'clock, my husband and I are trying to go to bed. He's just got to get it out of his system, because he does every day. He practices.
Nice.
And, we just never say anything. We're just like, go ahead and do it. It's amazing how permissive we are about it. But he'll do it when I'm in the middle of a session. So I've started to try to get kind of a balance, between, letting him know, hey, I've got a session from this time to this time, this time to this time. Do you want me to print it out? And he's like, no, I can remember that, Mom, because one day I had him shredding, and I had the landscaper outside doing his thing. And then across the way, they were taking down a tree.
Oh boy.
Seriously shredding. Like, I had all this going on, and I was going into channeling mode, which you can't just go, can you please stop? You're in that mode. And then it would stop, and everything would sound really like clear and loud with the people. And then I'd all snort up again. So nobody talks about that when you hear the lawnmower go by, and having home businesses is challenging.
Yeah. I mean, so actually last night we had a pet channeling, and the neighbor's dog 5 minutes before the session. And I will say that dog is very intuitive to when I'm calling in somebody else's pet.
Interesting.
It seems that way.
It seems that. I'll say coincidentally, but I think it's more than coincidence. He will start barking. Now, for me, it has been a learned practice to dial that out of my hearing. So as the world could be taking place around me. Lawnmowers, dog barking, the beeping from the UPS truck coming down the driveway. As I'm entering into that space where I'm taking my breath to enter into channeling, I'm using that to create white noise.
So you're going with it.
I'm going with it. Yeah. Because I've tried to fight it, and nope, not going to happen. So
the more you try not to think about the pink elephant in the room, that's all you can think about. The pink elephant
standing in the middle of the room. So I've gone through a process of using it, and it's more what I remember from the QHHT session. Any sounds that you hear in the room just help you to slide deeper into the into the trance.
Yeah.
So I started remembering that, and so I would then defocus those specific sounds, lawnmowers, dog barking, all the different sounds, and turn them into one mash of a sound of white noise. And I just allow myself just to drift out. So now at this point, I don't know, I could probably sit in front of a train horn and be fine. But it's taken practice, and Allison's right. It's taken time for me to different iterations of how I enter into trance. And it is more of my team guides me, as well as just intuitively, I know I've got to switch something up. So,
But for sure, it's nice to have this treehouse space and not have to worry about whether my dishes are clean in the house or
what's going on with
floors swept or whatever.
Well, I have a mentor that I'll occasionally attend one of her classes and stuff, and one of her things was, she was like, this week I want you to go out, find a park. And sit in that park and get into that space. Find the noisiest place you can find that should get all your attention. Because you need to be able to embrace it. Because the thing is, when you're in that higher vibrational space, and you have to be in that higher vibrational space to connect. That if you were to go into anger, what would that do for you? You have to see it as, what's the benefit in this? How is this, leveling me up? How is this? Right. Yeah, everything's for your better good.
And you brought up, your son playing music and stuff. For me, and again, a little bit behind the scenes, when I not before a trance or a channeling session, but before a psychic or a mediumship session, I come up here, or even in the house, I'd put on my headphones, and I'm an EDM guy. I like electronic dance music. The heavier the bass, that kind of thing. I'm all about it. All electronica, that kind of thing. I'll put that music on, and I'll pump the volume all the way up, and I'll just get connected to that vibration. And it's so easy to drop into spirit, start blending with spirit as they're entering into the room, because it's a vibrational state that you're taking yourself to. So it's easier for me to then, once the client arrives, I've got the music down, but I'm already connected.
See, I got to ask you about that, because so one of your suggestions, I asked you, what do you use? And you suggested Shastro.
Yeah.
And I love Shastro. So now I'm using that constantly, and it's such a beautiful nuance, because as I'm listening to it, I'm going through my grounding process, and then I'm running energy, and then I'm connecting up, inviting, guides or multidimensional beings or whatever. And it's funny because I'm starting to get to a point where I can't get it loud enough, and I want something more vibrational, like really? Pumping even more.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, it's the craziest thing, but it's the perfect amount of time.
It's a great 15, 20 minute section of music. But what's interesting is I've used that right from the beginning.
I can see why.
And about mid last year, I came and I used it for both personal channelings and pet channelings. Then I shifted away from using it during the personal channelings and only for pet channelings. About mid last year, completely.
It was time to move on.
Time to move on.
Yeah.
And I realized what time that is, and again, this is that behind the scenes, do the meditation beforehand kind of thing. I was laying there and listening to it, and I could always feel myself just slide out, get connected, and I'd be in that nice, comfortable connection space. But it got to a point where I would just lay there and I'd look at the ceiling.
Oh, no.
Okay, well,
now
what's going on?
Working.
I guess I don't need the music anymore.
Well, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
We can't, every time you find a ritual, like when I notice I start doing some, like right now I'm enjoying the music, but I also do it without the music, because the moment you find a ritual, you're going to be stuck if you don't have the ritual.
That's
Good
right.
point.
Like
That's right.
you don't have the batteries.
Rituals are for self. The rituals are for self. Spirit is just going to sit there and tap their fingers. They're waiting for you to just do your thing. Okay, So yeah, that is the very true. It's really for self, and it's like pulling up a warm, cozy blanket around you, going, okay, I'm in my comfort space. This is what I do to be able to invoke spirit. This is what I'm able to do to calm my energy. This is what I'm able to do. That could be working with crystals or whatever it is, music, working, whatever you do. Excuse me, but it's really just for self to feel comfortable, to be able to get into that space.
Intention setting.
Yep.
I just want to ask one more question here, and because I've got an answer to this, but I want to hear y'all's. Where is the weirdest place you've ever done a reading? Like the weirdest, like just strangest situation, or like that created a challenge, like a different structure, different place, different.
Well, I mean, we've done kind of a one-day event type of thing at a little metaphysical shop in Augusta, where I've done channeling. You've done some work there. I did some mediumship work there. It was a little constrictive because it was inside the actual shop, so you had to work around the tables of crystals and different things like that. So
that would be weird energy.
I mean, but actually, that's what I thought at first. That was my human side of things. I was like, I don't know if it's too small. It's too blah blah blah. It was magical. I mean, I had people on the way, but I mean, they were all segregated because you had to work your way around the tables and stuff. Adapt, overcome, military. It's adapt, overcome. Just try to figure it out. But because I dance with the energy and I'm moving around a lot, I found myself kind of being drawn to certain corners and certain pockets and connecting with spirit there. So it was nice. I mean, they all kind of congregated with their own group of people, and I just had to find myself there and connect with them. So that was kind of interesting. Weirdest spot. I did
a group regression once at the Salt Cave in Somerville.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That was nice. Fun. 6 people in reclining, gravity chairs, and in the Salt Cave. But I got there and I realized I had forgotten my notebook of scripts.
Oh yeah.
And it was kind of early on, and although I read that script, as soon as the panic sinks in, then you can't remember the script. But somehow I did it, and I winged it, and it worked. And but yeah. I
will say that it wasn't necessarily that it was, I guess you could say it was weird. So when I first started channeling, because I was having to be induced, and we were like, okay, well, we need to let other people know about this. I mean, this is exciting. This is exciting stuff. All the information that's coming through. We did it in the house. We did it at the Salt Cave. We did it at Unity Church. And it was like...
It's good to have that variety.
Like Edgar Casey. Bring the massage table in, lay the massage table out, lay down on the massage table. Allison induces me into a trance, and then go on about the question.
It was a little weird. Thinking about it now, it is kind of odd.
Because here I am splayed out.
What people thought about him lying out flat on a table.
Splayed out on a massage table and answering questions. So I guess if you want to ask, strange things, that would probably be the strangest,
Okay, so my strangest, I love those. And that vision of you laid out, like, I'm sorry, that is the funniest thing right there. So I met this woman at one of my husband's events that he shoots, and he's a photographer. That's why he was shooting.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And just let's clarify. And she was really desperate for a reading. And I had an 8-hour drive home. And I thought, I kind of go into trance anyway. Sure. When you're driving, I knew I was on a freeway, right?
Oh, my goodness.
And so she was really super desperate. So I decided, okay, let me go ahead and give this a go. Because you don't know what you don't know till you know it.
Know it, exactly.
So I'm thrilled I didn't hit any cars, that I didn't get a speeding ticket. None of that happened. The reading was such a flow. Like, it was such a cool experience. I mean, I felt like I was no longer in the car, that I was gliding along, which is why I'm amazed that I didn't have an accident.
Right.
And like, I did have it on cruise control. And this is before, the cruise control would slow down
Adaptive,
the car.
Right,
So it just... but the thing is, every once in a while, because I see images coming in too, so every once in a while, I'm in this space.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, there is some part of me that's paying attention to the road.
Sure.
I know there is. So I've done this twice in my life.
Interesting.
Not a smart thing to do.
Yeah.
it's
That's fascinating. Though
it was good. But
the ultimate AI driving machine. That's really what it comes down to.
Wow, yeah.
Because you do get intuitive. I get intuitive
well,
stuff driving on my way to work.
You get in that zone.
We always tell our students when we're talking to them during the Reiki classes or other things is, trance or channeling really isn't that, that hard.
We do it all the time.
We do it all the time. You're sitting in a car and 50 miles goes by and you don't know where those 50 miles went to, but yet you were in this deep thought process about something. You were channeling. You were in a trance-like state, though your physical body knew exactly what it needed to do to get those 50 miles. Yeah. Your consciousness was actually processing something at a much higher level. So that's the essence of it. I mean, absolutely. I, for myself, my initial downloads for early on were all coming while I was driving between here and Charleston. That was a 30 to hour-long drive, depending on the traffic. And I'd get on the highway, and I'd just start vibrating. And it was just like...
You did get a lot of interesting stuff.
A lot of downloads. So.
Well, and then the other one was when my son and I... Okay, and this is different. We'll do another one on this stuff. But when we were leaving Arizona, and we saw the first UFO we've ever seen. And when you see that... when you see that, you know what you're seeing. There is no doubt about that. But what was cool... was that my son had it within his head. He's driving. I was not. But he had it within his head to say, Mom, can you reach out to them? And I'm like, I don't know. And so, I gave it a go. And he is really good at asking questions. And he drilled, I went into my, my state, and I connected to, it was a hive mind with one person representing and or one individual, whatever, energy, and he drilled me with these questions. Now, as we're driving along, I felt disconnected from my body, and the thing is, I know that I was in a car with motion, but I no longer felt the seat beneath me. I just felt like I was gliding along.
Wow.
Like it was the craziest experience.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that was cool. Fun.
We got to dive into that again.
Yeah,
on another one for sure.
Yeah.
But this has been a joy, a blast talking about
we always
all
learned so much.
I know, right?
The behind the scenes stuff, and now you guys, all of our deep and dark secrets. But thank you guys so much for being present with us. And if you like what you hear, please share. A lot of people need this information at this time in history. Hit the notification bell and like the video. Subscribe if you wish, and share away. Thanks again for joining us for Out on the Limb podcast.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.